Well, today I am concluding a series with you. We've been working for quite a while together on Joseph. This will be the 6th week of that. And in this series, we have looked at a young man and we have journeyed with him for several weeks. And today we are going to look at the plan of God realized in this young man's life. Today we're going to watch the plan become a reality. We're going to watch not only the promise, we're not going to just see the process, but we're also going to see the plan of God realized in this young man's life. He comes from a tough family background. Things aren't good at home. Life has been unfair to this man many times. He's had problems at work. He's been misunderstood. His character has been attacked. He's been deliberately misunderstood. And then last week we talked about the fact that he was deliberately overlooked, that he was forgotten. Today we're going to be reading from Genesis chapter 41. We're going to also be reading from Genesis chapter 42. One of the ways that you can look at Joseph's life is through the coats that he has worn. At the beginning of this story, his dad will give him a coat. It's an interesting coat because it doesn't fit what he does with his life and where he's at in his station in life. The coat that is given to him is richly decorated. It's rich colors. It's far more appropriate for a prince than the son of a shepherd. Joseph walks around in this coat, and this coat will be taken away from him. It will be soaked in animal's blood, and it will be given to his dad with a lie. Joseph will be sold into slavery. He'll end up in a man's house named Potiphar. Potiphar will give him another garment, and he will be wearing this coat. And this coat, too, will be taken away from him. Mrs. Potiphar will notice him, and in a moment of less than subtle attraction, she will say to this young man, "Come to bed with me." She's aggressive enough to grab his coat and to pull it off of his body, and he runs from the house. He ends up being falsely accused and going to prison, where he works in the prison, and Pharaoh, last week, where I left this story with you, has a dream. Joseph interprets the dream about 7 years of famine and 7 years of plenty. And Joseph is appointed number 2 in all of Egypt to oversee the grain and the income of all of the food to Egypt. And at this time, Pharaoh will give him a robe. It's going to be a coat out of fine linen, and nobody is going to steal this one while they're lying about him. No one is going to take this coat and soak it in animal's blood and break his father's heart with it. This one he'll keep. This one will be the realization of the plan that God has birthed in his heart for this young man. This season will center and will be filled with success. The question is, can he serve God even when everything is going his way? The question is for you today, can you serve God even in success? I want to talk to you from the life of Joseph today about how to handle success. Joseph is going to succeed on an almost unparalleled level. And he is going to succeed in achieving the plan that God has for him. Joseph will do 3 key things that I want to encourage you in, both to bring success and to continue fulfilling God's plan for your life and a time of success. The first thing is this: Joseph continued acknowledging God. Even after Joseph became powerful, he continued to acknowledge God. So how does he do this? How does Joseph acknowledge God? Well, first of all, he acknowledges God in public settings. Not only will Joseph be professing and acknowledging God in a public setting, but he's also going to back that up by acknowledging God in his private life. This leads us straight into our second point. Joseph never allows his priorities to shift. And the third thing that Joseph did in his success was he extended forgiveness. So the first thing we see Joseph do in this area of forgiveness is he tests his brothers. As a matter of fact, for 2 chapters, he's going to test them. He's going to poke at this thing, and he's going to look at this thing, and he's going to explore this thing, and he's looking for a possible opportunity to bring complete reconciliation with these 10 men. He wants to know about Benjamin. He wants to know where this young brother is, if he's been treated the way that he was treated. And after he tests them, he forgives them. Now, please understand, Joseph's been wronged. There's no question about it. He can blame his dad for his situation. He can blame his brothers. He could blame a caravan of traders who would buy such a young man and take him off and sell him again. He could blame Potiphar. He could blame Mrs. Potiphar. He could blame a warden in a prison or a cupbearer who forgot him. The list goes on and on. Many say, Pastor, I have the right to be bitter. So did Joseph. The right doesn't mean it's the best thing for you. Quit quoting your right about bitterness and do what's best for you. Do what's best for today. Do what's best for the plan of God in your life. Joseph had every right to be bitter, and yet his life is marked by forgiveness. Genesis 45:5 says this, "And now, do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." Joseph will push this relationship with his brothers into reconciliation. He will push the relationship with his own dad into reconciliation. In verse 45:4, he says, "Come close to me." Verse 5, he says, "Don't be afraid." And in verse 8, he says, "It was God who sent me here." Forgiveness was proven by what he did. Not just what he said, but what he did. Joseph's forgiveness wasn't just seen in what he did. It was seen in what he didn't do when he had the opportunity to do it. He acted in forgiveness in all situations exactly the same. Forgiveness is a concept that must mark our lives. Forgiveness is a concept that sometimes we misunderstand, but we must be experts at it. We must be authorities on the subject. We must have it mark our every relationship and our every opportunity in life. Let me give you some misconceptions about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is not an emotion. Forgiveness isn't easy. And forgiveness isn't letting the other person off the hook. Forgiveness is an act of your will. Forgiveness is for your benefit. Forgiveness is something that we are commanded in God's word to do. Forgiveness is not an issue between me and another person. Forgiveness is an issue between me and God. There are some barriers to forgiveness. People waiting until they want to forgive. I've never forgiven one time in my life that I wanted to. I forgive out of obedience because that's what I've been instructed in God's word to do. Pride is an obstacle. It's a barrier to forgiveness. Fear. Worries about rejection. You just keep rehearsing the wrong over and over and over and over again. How can you forgive? You keep the thing alive. Partial forgiveness. You say you forgive, but you don't act like you forgive. The last thing about Joseph on his forgiveness is he didn't just give them a sack of grain and send them home. He provided for them. It says in verse 11 of 45 Genesis, "I will provide for you there because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your households and all who belong to you will become destitute." He took care of them. 3 questions that I've been asking myself as I prepared this sermon. 3 questions I'd like you to ask yourself in your quiet moment with the Lord. What do I need to forget? What do I need God to help me forget the pain of in my life? The second question I've been asking myself is, who do I need to forgive? And the last question is this: can my character handle the success I'm asking God to give me? Forgiveness, character, success. And I want to remind you one more time, you can make it. You can do this thing. Everything we've talked about with God's help is absolutely obtainable for you. You can make it. The plan of God can be realized in your life. God is for you. Who could be against you?